In a very structured position, if you like, within Beagle or Ahol, and suddenly you were moved to a position that was, you were autonomous.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you'd agree with that, but you know, what happened was up to you. And I mean, and I think balancing that against the risks, and I mean, we spoke about the political context. I don't know how you felt about that, because I think that was a huge responsibility.
It's exactly like they've just said, it was about the autonomy, the ability to have an idea and go out and make it happen, and having the trust in you to go and do that. I felt like for once you were actually allowed to kind of care about the people you were looking after, get involved with the families, which we hadn't really done before, get involved with the community agencies that also cared about them, and then get the feedback about how they'd found it and how they coped when they got out, which we'd never heard any of that before either. So it was just, to me, it was a completely different way of working, and without a doubt it was the change for me that made me think, yeah, this is actually the job that I want to do, and the job that I thought it had been when I first signed up to it.
What was the first thing you remember, the kind of decisions you were able to take on your own?
All of a sudden we would have to take 8 girls out with the usual criteria as to why we would have to take them, so, and it was left to myself and Graham to go and Stevie to choose the girls essentially very quickly and bring them up, and this was all out with the criteria, all out with the rules of how it was supposed to happen, but I understood why we had to do it, and that was the difference, and we knew the nature of it, the importance of it, and how important it was that we got it right. And that was the first thing I remember, is that we had to go down and interview all these girls. I went to another establishment that I'd never done before. I spoke to management who I'd never have spoken to before. I was involved in meetings I'd never have gone to before, and I understood the context of what we were doing, and probably for the first time in my career.
Ownership, as Stevie says, to be given ownership of something, to be given freedom to do basically what you feel you can do best, to me is a big thing.
I think one for me was when Angelina report came up, and when the prisoners came back in and she kind of fed back in and said how she turned her life around, and that was in tears and that, and I think I would be sitting on the table and thinking, you did a good job, but it wasn't until you seen it right back you kind of thought, well, okay, we do make a hell of a difference.
I'll never forget that either, and in fact folk were crying
I know,
that day, sitting on the table, and the really powerful thing that you said that day, I asked her specifically, what made the difference? And she said, and this is when it really was because somebody cared, and she was referring to you.
No, I felt everybody working.
She was referring to you.
No, it's our team.
This is one of the biggest problems, getting people to take credit. And you did it as you thought it should be, and not as somebody else. Textbook.
Well, as Graham said, it was certainly my first opportunity to go out and meet different community agencies, and it was actually amazing that a lot of people genuinely don't know what a prison officer does and don't know how difficult a job it is, but why you do it, and the many hats that you have to wear.
You've got to be generous, you've got to sometimes give quite a lot as well. We tried to give Tory Trust things and time and people. Really, you're a trustee. You know, it's about making all these connections.
There was a sense of just go for it. You felt that you were allowed to take risks, and it was one of the things that Graham said before, that he knew he had the backup, and I think that was about the leadership. You know, it's the leadership that gives you that arena in which you can take the risks and not be frightened of consequences.
So what kind of risks did you take?
For me, one of the biggest risks was to go and engage with this sort of work without any previous experience.
Brought people in, and I think within the North East, I think we've completely changed perceptions about A, the prison, how bad it was, and B, about what imprisonment means. But it takes hard work, and you have to keep at it. But to be perfectly honest with you, it's a slog. It's a slog. There is no fix. You've got to go there at a time and a place when people want you to be there, and you've got to go out and be persistent in your message. And over the 10 years I worked in Aberdeen, I'll guarantee I did hundreds of presentations to everybody and anybody that would listen.
I think that the leadership set a really high standard of expectation, and also thought that it was always a very creative and innovative environment to work in, and that there was the sense that they didn't want change for change's sake, but that change was something that was really seen as a positive thing, and an important thing in that environment.
And I and I used to say this to my colleagues, governors as well, who think that they can go and make one statement to the press and everybody's going to read it and everybody's going to be a believer. It doesn't happen like that. You've got to work really hard at it. You've got to be passionate, and you've got to put your point across. It's not something you can just assume is going to happen. You've got to work on these relationships.